What's up guys, it's Alec from Cichlid Bros. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how and why we heat our aquariums. There are many things to consider when heating your aquarium and ensuring the methods you choose are effective. So here are 10 things to consider when heating your aquariums. Let's dive right in. Thing to consider number 1, should you heat your tank or heat your room? Many people believe that when having a fish room or a room with a lot of fish tanks, that it's best to heat the room rather than heating each individual aquarium. It would especially be more effective if you had multiple larger aquariums in one room because heating large aquariums with heaters can be a little difficult. However, if you are like me and your fish room is in a place like your basement where heating the space to 68 to 80 degrees just isn't feasible, you will have to opt to heat each individual aquarium.
And that's pretty much the same for me. My basement is pretty big, so it'd be pretty challenging to heat the entire room and be heating the upstairs. It would be a lot of energy just to be heating the entire area. Plus it wouldn't be quite as comfortable for me. I kind of like the colder temperatures down here in the basement, so heating the room really wasn't an option for me. But if I had a separate fish room somewhere or a more confined space, heating the room would be much more effective.
The second thing to consider is the temperature of the room the aquariums are in. Like many basements, my basement fish room is typically pretty chilly even in the summer. Even when the main floor of my house is in the 70s, my basement stays in the 60s. This puts a little extra strain on heaters and may cause you to need to increase the amount of wattage you put in your fish tank for heaters. Consideration number 3 is what size heater. Most aquarium heaters come with instructions for how many gallons that heater can heat. However, you must also consider the difference between the room temperature and target temperature of your aquarium. The rule of thumb is 3 to 5 watts per gallon depending on the temperature of the room or if the aquarium is next to a cold window or door.
For example, my 180 gallon acrylic aquarium here has two 300 watt heaters, so that is 600 watts for a 180, roughly 3.3 watts per gallon, and it heats this tank just fine. Also, acrylic aquariums retain heat about 20% better than glass, so the 3.3 watts per gallon is ideal here. If this were a glass tank, I may want to bump up the strength of my heaters in total watts.
The fourth thing to consider is the amount of heaters in your aquarium. It is always best to have more than one heater, especially on larger aquariums, just in case the heater stops working before you're aware of it. Multiple heaters help get larger aquariums the wattage they need to maintain proper temps. It also helps decrease the workload of each heater, extending its lifespan. Alright, so now you know the wattage of heat you need in your aquarium and how many heaters you need in that aquarium. The fifth thing to consider is where do you place those heaters? In my 220 gallon aquarium behind me, I have slots in my background for heaters and filter intakes. This is ideal because not only does it hide equipment, it also places the heater right where all the water flows to help distribute the heat throughout the entire aquarium. Hiding equipment is great for the overall look of the tank, but hiding a heater can sometimes restrict the coverage of the heater, so it's something to consider.
And to Alec's point, if you can hide equipment or your heaters, it can drastically improve the look of your aquarium. For example, my 150, I have the two heaters down in the sump so you can't see them at all. And then my 180, where I run canister filters, I put the two heaters on opposite ends of the tank where both of the two intakes of the canister filters are. Having them near that water movement disperses the heated water a little more effectively and really just improves that performance of the heaters that you do have.
Alright, so now we know how much heat we need, how many heaters we need, and where to place them. So the sixth thing to consider is should you buy a temperature controller? Perhaps the most vital aspect to consider with aquarium heaters is having a failsafe. The Inkbird temperature controller is a great product to ensure the safety and convenience of your heaters. The Inkbird comes with 2 outlets for heaters to plug into, a digital temperature control, Wi-Fi controllability, and 2 temperature sensors to put into the aquarium water. If the heater malfunctions and puts out too much heat, the Inkbird will shut that heater down. This thing will really help you sleep easy at night. A seventh thing to consider when heating your aquarium is what type of fish do you have and what are their temperature requirements. Different fish have different temperature requirements. Cichlids are tropical fish, so they do best in 76 to 80 degree water, with 78 degrees being ideal. They are hardy and can tolerate imperfect temperatures and live but not thrive. Some fish actually do best with no heaters and can thrive in room temperature water. Discus are an example of fish that require really warm water between 82 and 86 degrees. My eighth thing to consider is the heater itself. Beyond the wattage, what should you look for? This isn't a video that is promoting a certain heater, most heaters I've used work just fine. Each heater has their own design perks and flaws. Some heaters can be controlled with an app, which is very convenient. Some have digital screens that display the heater is working, and some heaters come with a preset temperature. I prefer low-profile heaters that can easily slot in a background or blend in with a black background of a tank. I also like my heaters to be adjustable just in case I need to set it above 78 degrees for various reasons. Consideration number 9 is to get a thermometer you can stick on the side of your tank. One tip I have is to get a cheap, low-profile thermometer you can stick somewhere on your tank that is not an eyesore, but you can double check that your heater or temperature controller are working properly. It's just a low-cost, easy thing to put your mind at ease. So we've talked about what type of heaters to get, how powerful of a heater to get, how many heaters you should get, and also the placement of those heaters, as well as a couple things to ensure that those heaters are working properly, a couple fail-safes. Now, I think you should know, as consideration number 10, what the effects of hot and cold water looks like in fish and how you can tell. You should be aware of what to look for in your fish if the aquarium gets too hot or too cold. I was closer to 3 watts per gallon on my 220 gallon aquarium before, and the heaters would struggle to maintain 78 degrees. When the temperature would fluctuate too low, the fish would be less active and have less of an appetite. You could also tell that the colors of the fish became dull. When I upped the wattage to more like 5 watts per gallon of heaters in the tank, I could tell a noticeable difference in color and behavior in my fish. In an aquarium that is on the warm side, fish can be a bit more aggressive, want to eat more, and can be seen noticeably gasping as oxygen levels become lower in warmer aquariums.
Another effect that elevated temperatures in an aquarium could have is faster fish growth, but also shorter lifespans. Depending on the type of cichlid, just make sure you're right in that sweet spot for their temperature, not going too hot or too cold. And one last thing to note is that elevated temperatures or dialing up your temperature just a bit could induce breeding in some cichlids, and sometimes if you're trying to breed fish that might be intended, but in a community cichlid tank like one of these, you may not even want that breeding and that aggressive behavior, so just be careful if you are bumping up that temperature.
Alright guys, so that'll do it for my top 10 things to consider when adding heaters to your aquarium. So if you have any thoughts or things to add, please leave them in the comments below. If you like videos like this, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.